My name is Kurt Muehmel. I am Dataiku's head of AI strategy. And what we're going to be doing to kick things off here this afternoon is we're going to take a few steps into the future, a future which may at times seem far away, but which you probably need to be reaching out towards and actually bringing it closer, because it raises real questions about your competitiveness and how you position yourself relative to your competitors in your markets. And so I'm going to be also talking about one of the risks that we see, a risk which may not yet be on your radar, but is one that is very real, and that's what we're calling the commodity AI trap. And of course, you can imagine, right, we're also not going to leave you hanging. We're also going to present a solution to that. And that solution is, of course, differentiation, differentiated AI. So over the course of this talk, I'm going to start pretty wide, and then we're going to go very, very narrow, very, very deep, but then we're going to widen it out at the end. So let's get started. What do I mean by commodity AI? Well, it's very simple, right? Think about a very simple graph. Along the horizontal axis, you have all of your spending, your AI spending, which is going to be across so many different things. You are already working on these budgets, probably. You're coming up in that cycle again. You know that you're going to be spending on some of the models, on various cloud costs, on excellent advice and services from consultants. But of course, I don't need to tell you that you're going to get money back from this. I don't think anyone in here is worried about the value that you might get from AI. We're going to talk about how to quantify that, perhaps. We're going to talk about how that can be built into the standard financial metrics of your organization. But I don't think anyone in this room is really doubting the fact that AI is going to be valuable, right? It's going to be valuable in terms of efficiency across the organization, in terms of automation opportunities throughout your business. It's going to be new products that you might be able to bring into the market. And of course, it's better insights with this new ability now, especially from these large language models, to synthesize information in a way that you maybe could never have done before. And so ultimately, right, what is this going to look like? How is this graph going to evolve? Well, there's one version of this story where you and your most beloved competitor are both spending plenty of money, right? But you're also getting plenty of value out of it, right? We spent a lot of money, we've got a lot of value. This is great, we're all more efficient. The economy is more productive. The Federal Reserve is extremely excited about the fact that the US economy is now more productive than it was before. But there's no gap. You've spent all this money just to keep up with your competitor. You're using the same models, you're using them in similar ways, and at the end of the day, you're getting similar amounts of value back out of them. And so you've spent all this money just to barely keep up. How do we change this story? How do we change the function to change that curve? How do we make it so that you and your competitor, who are both spending plenty of money on this new category, not only get more value, but you, not your competitor, gets ahead? And that's the notion of differentiated AI. It's the concept of using the same technologies in a better way. It's a question of effectiveness, right? There's often a confusion between efficiency and competitiveness, and often we like to go back and compare this to previous categories of software. You know, before the era of CRMs, right? People were less efficient in the way that they managed their sales work. Everybody uses a CRM today, but you wouldn't say that because you use a CRM, you're more competitive than your nearest competitor. Instead, you're more efficient, and that's great. But what really matters is how you apply that technology and how you can build versions of that technology for yourself that are going to be stronger. And that is all the more true in the era of AI, given the vast potential that it has. So, what will differentiated AI look like? There's going to be many different possibilities here, of course, because, of course, artificial intelligence is a general-purpose technology. We can apply it throughout our business. We're going to apply it throughout the economy. It's going to be a big part of our lives going forward. Everyday AI, you might call it. But what we want to focus on now, and this is where we start going a little bit narrower, is I want to give you an example. I want to give you some examples of what this might look like in a context which I assume many of you are familiar with. If you're at a Dataiku conference, you're probably pretty familiar with how analytics are developed and delivered within your organization. And so that's the example we're going to take as we go narrower and deeper. So let's get going. Today, right, there are a lot of challenges in the ways that analytics are prepared and delivered in the organization. Now, a lot of you, Dataiku customers especially, are doing much better than you used to be doing it, right? Things are more efficient than they used to be, but still, there are opportunities where an organization has the data somewhere. A business person out on the front line needs that insight, but still is not able to receive it. In the future, we anticipate that the leading adopters of AI are going to have hundreds of agents working in the back end in their organization. These are AI-powered agents that are doing things both to automate various processes, to support decisions across the organization, and of course to automate the generation of analytics, right? That's one potential use case. And so those leading organizations are going to have to manage, develop, perhaps purchase, we'll come back to that a little bit later, some of those agents for themselves. So let's go more specific. Let's take an example of what that looks like in the context of an analytics AI agent. And let's start by first considering what it looks like today for analytics to be developed in an organization. We start with our dear business person up in the top left, who is in any department. Could be HR, finance, marketing. They have a question. They need data. They need insight to make a better decision. They ask that question to their analyst. There's going to be a back and forth to clarify that question, of course, but ultimately, that analyst is then going to get to work. And that analyst is going to use their various tools, starting with their innate curiosity, their intelligence, to start digging into that question. They're going to use their analytical skills, maybe writing some SQL, some Python. Ultimately, they're going to also use their access to data. That analyst has privileged access to data that the business person does not have, right? Not everybody has access to all the data in the organization. That analyst is then going to develop those results. They're going to package them up in a format which is meaningful and impactful to that business person, a report, a presentation, a dashboard, and they're going to deliver it back to them. And of course, it's going to be right the first time. It always is, right? No, of course, we're going to go back and forth, and we're going to do this several times, right? And it's going to be, a matter of hours in the best case, but more likely days to weeks before ultimately that business person gets that new analysis that they need to inform their decision. Let's jump ahead to the near future, right? We can anticipate that there's going to be AI-powered decision support systems that are always on, always available to receive that question, to generate a response, and to provide it back to that business person. How are they going to do that? Well, there's going to be several different AI models, right? Large language models, most likely, but probably some specialized ones in there as well, that have access to certain sources of data and who have access to certain sources of tools or certain types of tools, Python, SQL, machine learning models, to be able to generate those results for that end user. But what happened to the analyst, right? We've got analysts in the room here. We've got leaders of analytics teams here. Well, of course, they're still gainfully employed. And not only that, they're now freed from kind of the drudgery of just doing these one-off reports over and over again. They're now building, maintaining, and governing these AI decision systems because they don't know what to do on their own, these systems. So let's go even more specific, and let's actually dive into what one example of these could look like. So imagine a system that is supporting a sales team. We can imagine here, this one, we're going to choose one with a chat interface. Not all agents are going to have chat interfaces, but this one we decided to use just because it's a pretty typical interface. And you see it's internal assistance portal for sales performance, and we are in the pipeline health agent. And we go and we ask it a question. Perhaps, well, this is US West, it should have been US East, in which case it could have been Johnny asking the question. But Johnny, imagine, is asking the question of his agent about the probability of hitting our Q4 target, right? Very relevant question. He wants a comparison with historical data, and he has a worry about a preponderance of large deals and what happens if they slip. So we need to do some scenario testing. And what this agent might be able to do is respond back and say, yeah, sure, I've generated those analytics. And in addition to that, and that's actually the most important part, I also noted something interesting, in this case, that there was an account executive with a lot of large deals, and that might be a risk. And what we're showing there is that it's some version of creativity or some version of providing new insight which was not directly asked for. And that's the most powerful version of this. And then you can imagine they scroll down, they get the data, they get the dashboard, they get the report, and so on. What's actually happening behind the scenes? Okay, so behind the scenes, it's of course more complicated. We have that question coming from Johnny. Johnny's asking the question. First, a large general purpose model is probably going to interpret that question and break it up into some subparts, right? It's then going to hand that off into several additional models, which are going to do things like write SQL to gather the historical data, write Python to run some of the analysis, and probably some that are going to go and look for additional questions that they could explore. That's where that pseudo-curiosity comes from. So as a result, we're going to get some new data sources, we're going to get some machine learning models, we're going to get some new ideas, which are going to then loop back and then be fed back into that system. There's probably going to be a large model that serves as some sort of evaluator. It's been told what to look for in terms of good results. It doesn't know that on its own, but you can either fine-tune it or prompt it in such a way that it knows what it should be looking for. When it says, yeah, these are pretty good results, it's going to hand that off to one that's going to develop the visualization or the report, which is then going to hand that back to the model, which is going to prepare the results and provide it with that answer that we just saw. So even as complicated as this looks, it's probably a gross simplification of what it means to actually build one of these systems. Because somebody needs to go in there and imagine, design, build, test, verify that this actually works as it should. Because of course, if Johnny is then going to go in to talk to his boss, Nick, and say, yeah, I think we're good for Q4, if he's wrong, he's not going to be able to have the excuse, well, the AI was wrong, right? It's still going to be on Johnny if he's right or not. So sorry, Johnny, calling you out here, right? You're good for Q4, right, Johnny? Love to hear it. So there's a lot of design work in here that we need to go through to make sure that this thing actually works. Now, looking at this, right, this presents many opportunities for differentiation. Now, you could go and buy one of these off the shelf. You're going to have that option. There's going to be a huge market for agents that do things like this. But what you might want to do, if you so choose, is to build one of these yourself such that you could have that differentiation. So what are the potentials for differentiation in a system like that? Well, first, you could have a fine-tuned LLM that's really good at interpreting that question. It knows the language, it knows the jargon of your business, of your sales team. Then maybe you have one which is self-hosted, and that one is one where you're really confident that you can give it all the most sensitive data in your organization, because it's never going to go outside of your firewall. Perhaps there's another one which is smaller and therefore cheaper to run, which is really specialized in Python for analytics. So it doesn't know all of Python, but it's really good at the packages that are relevant for analytics, for NumPy, for pandas, for scikit-learn, those. You give it access, controlled access to your data. You perhaps find a way to give fast feedback from the field so that when that sales manager or that sales leader says, no, that's not what I'm looking for, that can be incorporated into it. You give it access to maybe proprietary code libraries that you've developed that are really good at running that kind of analysis. And you can have access into your own machine learning models, doing clustering, doing predictions, to generate that analysis. Okay. So this is cool, right? It would be cool to have one of these, and it would be cool to have one that works better than your competitors so that you can do a better job, in this case, of sales forecasting. But it seems like a lot. And it seems also relatively specific, and that's an important point, right? I think there's been a misconception around the fact that we're just going to have one, oracular chatbot that can tell us any answer about the question. But you wouldn't actually want that, right? Because you wouldn't want any user to be able to ask any question to a system that has access to all of your data. You need to compartmentalize. And also, as we've seen, you need to specialize these systems so that they can actually give relevant results, and you can maintain them in some sort of significant or practical way. So let's imagine, though, how many of these might you need across your organization? Is it 1, 10, 100, 1,000? Well, let's take the example of a large pharmaceutical company, like some of you in the room. If we look across the different departments, sales and marketing, finance, operations, research, HR, we've chosen 5 different departments, and in each of those 5 departments, we can probably easily imagine 5 different domains which could benefit from an agent, or actually probably several different agents. So let's dig into that. Remember, we were in sales performance previously, so let's go ahead and open that one up. And within that, you can imagine a small team of agents, maybe half a dozen or so. One that's an account expert, which is providing you new information, aggregating information from public sources about what's going on in your account. Maybe you have another one, which is not a chatbot, which is working on the back end, right? That's your MedPick enforcer, which is just going through your sales pipeline and seeing if your sales methodology is being applied appropriately. Maybe you have another one which is automatically generating meeting summaries, so your account executives, your sales representatives don't have to spend time on that anymore. One that's assisting with follow-ups, And then, of course, our pipeline health chatbot that we just saw a couple of minutes ago. And so how are you going to equip an organization like this pharmaceutical company with all of these? Because I had 5 different departments, 5 different domains, and 5 different agents within each of those. So 5 times 5 times 5, 125. So the answer to the question, order of magnitude, probably in the hundreds, right, that you might want to have in order to derive the maximum value from AI. Well, you're going to have some options. You might be able to hire a bunch of software engineers to go through and build them all from scratch. Or you might want to purchase all of these different agents off the shelf because, and let me go back one slide, I guarantee you there is going to be a very lively market for every one of these domains. You're going to have medpick.ai knocking on your door, if they aren't already, asking you to please purchase our solution. We have the best medpick enforcer agent that you can buy on the market, and it's really very good, and you just need to pay us a little bit out of that big AI budget that you're working on. But the truth is, right, are you able to do that, and would you want to do that? We think hiring a bunch of software engineers is probably not realistic for most organizations. Even pure-play AI companies have a hard time hiring the kind of talent that you would need to build that truly from scratch. And then the challenge with just buying everything off the shelf from all of the .ai startups is that you're not going to be differentiated, and that's where you risk falling into the commodity AI trap. So what you're going to need to do instead is make some choices. What do I build and what do I buy? So coming back to our pharmaceutical company, we see those different domains. And what we anticipate will happen will be that that company is going to buy the ones where it's just seeking efficiency gains, not where it's seeking differentiation. But for some critical capabilities, which could be in these domains, then in those areas, you're going to need to build your own capabilities, your own AI capabilities, your own differentiated AI in order to separate yourself from the pack. And obviously, right, you're at a Dataiku conference, so this is no surprise. We believe that Dataiku is and is going to continue to be the platform for building those capabilities and governing them. The governance point is an extremely important one because as many of you know, there is regulation coming. So for example, the EU AI Act is going to be coming out relatively soon. And that means that if you have operations in Europe, if you're selling in Europe, for example, you're going to be concerned by that. And that example that I just gave you about that pipeline health agent, that might be considered a high-risk use case under the EU AI Act, which comes with different requirements. And so having a platform not only to build, maintain, and manage those, but to govern them is going to be all the more important. And this ultimately is the path to avoid the commodity AI trap, is to make those important decisions around where are we going to buy versus where are we going to build, to be sure that ultimately, not only are you getting positive ROAI, return on AI, but you're getting more than your competition, that you are not falling into that trap, and you're building differentiated AI. Thank you very much.